everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're gonna go up to Georgia to visit one of my best friends up there, Andrew, who's gonna show me around the often overlooked Georgia Northeastern Railroad. Now, at this point in autumn, the line is extremely scenic and would treat us quite well. So I hope you guys enjoy this little taste of shortline railroading through the Blue Ridge Mountains. Never have I looked forward so much to recording this morning's B-roll, as Andrew and I would leave the house early and instantly get greeted by North Georgia's beautiful fall colors, evident on the mountaintops, countrysides, and even through the heart of the commercial and residential area here in Canton. We're currently about 45 minutes north of Atlanta, with our goal this morning to find the Georgia Northeastern Railroad, which we'd expect to be working this Friday morning. From experience, Andrew would guide us north first this morning, which would yield plenty of trackage, albeit empty, until we'd reach a point just south of what the railroad calls Nelson, where Georgia Northeastern personnel and a couple track gangs would be working on the crossing here at Jordan Road. Here we'd learn about today's road project and today's local train, already far south of us by now, around 9 a.m. So we'd bid the roadway crew a farewell here and hit the pavement southbound to Marietta, and the bottom of this once mighty Etowah sub. 43 minutes later, and we're set up at the southern end of GNRR's system at Marietta, where the shortline interchanges with CSX along their W&A subdivision, which runs north out of Atlanta up to Chattanooga, and a line we'll cover in videos to come shortly. Known on the CSX side as Control Point Elizabeth, the Georgia Northeastern sees interchange traffic here nightly from a CSX local out of Atlanta, bringing cars up to the short line, which would make up their train this morning as 4 GNRR motors line up for the northbound track. Since its original charter in 1854, the Georgia Northeastern has gone through plenty of name and ownership changes, starting with the line's initial builder, the L.J. Railroad, which would change after a buyout, becoming the Marietta, Canton, and L.J. Railroad. That title wouldn't last long, however, as the line was soon renamed to the Marietta and North Georgia Railroad before being bought out by the L&N, which is one of CSX's many subsidiaries. This original main line to Etowah from Marietta would finally be bought out by the GNRR shortly after the 1986 creation of CSX Transportation, and has run as such ever since. It's now owned and operated by Patriot Rail, hence the new blue colors on the 4th locomotive in today's consist, yet the original red nose scheme is still a prominent sight, coding the leader of this morning's train towards Tate. The GNRR utilizes the L&N's original Etowah sub towards Blue Ridge, serving the communities of Woodstock, Canton, Ball Ground, Tate, and Whitestone on its way north. From Whitestone to Blue Ridge, the line is slated for abandonment, however, as the Blue Ridge Scenic Railway plans to build an engine shop in Blue Ridge, which is why that section was even kept in operation in the first place. From Blue Ridge, the line continues north to Etowah, yet the Scenic Railway would always send their engines south to the GNRR for servicing. Since that operation will no longer occur, the tracks have been deemed redundant, and a redundant property tax for the railroad, which, like their Class 1 partners, are always looking to save a couple bucks here and there. Just 5 minutes shy of 10 a.m. now, and our northbound train is on the move out of town and wide open, pulling over 24 cars up the steep grade that brings the railroad up and out of the Marietta Valley in preparation to overpass US 41 and I-75 near Woodstock. We'd pack up as the train still notched its way out of the yard in order to beat some of Marietta's finest morning traffic, yet catching up to the train would end up being an easier task than expected. Even with all 4 general-purpose locomotives online this day, the aforementioned grade would still challenge the little train as they slow to a crawl at the top of the hill. Up the line just a mile or two is Woodstock, and our first run-by shot of the day, as the tracks peel to the northwest in order to realign with the parallel Highway 5 and our route for this morning's chase. Today's leader would be engine 3810, originally built for the L&N in June of 1961 as a Jeep 38 AC. After some modifications in the late 90s, it's now labeled on the railroad as a Jeep 38-2, with reporting marks for the Columbia and Cowlitz Railway, now owned by Patriot Rail and assigned to this Georgia Northeastern line. Trailing behind that is the 3804, built in 1979 for the Southern Pacific, currently leading GNRR's very own 2000, still in the railroad's red and gray scheme, and the oldest of the bunch here, built 56 years ago in 1969. Trailing fourth is engine D32, another Jeep 38 variant, who'd get dropped off later on to lead another local train south in the coming week. For now, I'd take the high ground on top of Andrew's truck for this shot along Dean Road at noonday, another small community here north of Atlanta, centered around Kell High School and the large sport complex that they maintain just behind those trees. GNRR's train today would be nothing out of the ordinary, made up mostly of two-bay cement hoppers bound for the large planet Gobber, a spot that the railroad calls Lehigh. The single flat car is bound for UAC Alloy in Canton, a metal manufacturer who constructs parts of all kinds for airplanes, with that open-top hopper bound for one of two places. At the end of the operational line at Whitestone north of Tate, there's a sand mine, but also out of Tate, there's a small branch line that takes cars like these. We wouldn't be able to find out today, as we'd move up the line to the village of Woodstock, where the tracks split the town in two and where our train would be shortly. Located 30 miles north of Atlanta, Woodstock would be incorporated in 1897, with its name derived from an 1826 novel from English writer Walter Scott. By 1912, the L&N had entered the scene, constructing a depot right in the heart of downtown. Built around agriculture and the cotton industry of the early 20th century, Woodstock would grow around the railroad. Although passenger service would ultimately cease in 1949, the depot here still remains, now serving a pizza kitchen within, still just feet away from the GNRR, and the familiar horns that have been echoing through town for over a century. On the map, it's known as Lebanon, but for historians and railroaders alike, this is Toonigh, a small siding between Woodstock and Holly Springs, where GNRR stores cars or drops cuts for pickup on a later date. We'd beat the train here by a few minutes as the crew prepared to drop those two tank cars into the siding here. It'd be a simple drop and go maneuver this morning, as the engineer pulls by his train past the north switch and applies the brakes along with three-step protection to allow both conductors to get to work. While one would remove the EOT, the other would throw the switch for the siding and open the derail that resides just a couple dozen yards into the siding, designed to keep the main line clear of any free-moving freight cars. This is business for the crew, but I bet they can't help but notice what a beautiful fall day it is, with temps in the low 60s and falling leaves here, there, and everywhere. A smooth coupling and tying down with the cars with their respective handbrakes would take about 15 minutes here at Toonigh as the train pulls north out of the siding and back onto the main line. The conductors would reset the derail and siding switch as the engineer would reverse back to his crew to let them back on the head end, saving a few minutes and a walk for both conductors. North from Toonigh, Palm Street is going to be your route, as the tracks curve west and then swing back towards Holly Street, where we'd make a left turn into downtown Holly Springs. With a population of just over 20,000 residents, Holly Springs resides in Cherokee County, and like many of its neighbors, charms the tourist with its small-town atmosphere amidst modern amenities. At one point, the old L&N served the town as well, with the depot still here and in great shape, although its passenger days are long gone, as the present-day visitor would rather drive to the many parks and recreational facilities that the town hosts. On the railroad side of things, this mountainous region once again takes a stab at the line, forcing the crew of today's train to open up their four little engines for the slope onto the high ground that Holly Springs is built upon. Out of Holly Springs, the line zigzags over the Scott Mill Creek before curving to the east once more to temporarily avoid the Etowah River to the north. Said curve will bring you into Canton and what the town has designated as the Mill on Etowah, a state-of-the-art shopping mall on the west side of town. Incorporated in 1834 on land at the time that was still part of the mighty Cherokee Nation, Canton drew the attention of many a settler for its proximity to the Etowah River, a trading route that would soon turn integral to the town's growth. Years later, in 1899, Robert Tyre Jones would found this cotton mill, the first of two along the Etowah River here in Canton, soon adding 6 additional brick buildings before getting converted into a denim factory in the mid-20th century. By 1981, the mill, factory, and support buildings were all closed when the parent company went bankrupt, but 21st century restorers saw an opportunity. By the mid-2010s, restoration work was already well underway, now complete, with breweries, tap rooms, a retail marketplace, and several restaurants all open to the public. We'd scope out the area and set up on one of the many wide staircases on the side of the main building here, as GNRR would arrive once again, rolling through the mill, as they've done now for decades. From Canton, the northbound train would stop just north of town for a lengthy drop of that fourth blue motor in the consist, destined for the spur track at Universal Ally Corporation on the north side of town. This little operation would take upwards of 2 hours for whatever reason, so Andrew and I would take the time to scope out some spots north on the line, throw the football around, and sit and wait. By the time our northbound train would enter our sight, it would just be before 3 p.m. now, as the sun would tuck away behind a sheet of cloud coverage that would end up making this autumn shot pretty much perfect, as GNRR brings down a solid patch of those colorful leaves, battling the Keithsburg grade in the process. To follow the tracks north towards Ball Ground, one can take the Ball Ground Highway, a parallel route to both the tracks and Interstate 575. The route streamlines the distance between spots compared to the railroad, and paired with the train's slow crawl up the aforementioned grade, Andrew and I would jump out just moments later for a wide open field shot as GNRR rumbles by in the distance. Finally, to the south side of Ball Ground we'd go, where our northbound train's day would end. Due to work north of here on the handful of crossings, the crew would split their train in two here and call it a day, leaving the last few miles to Tate, a job for next week's crew. It is, after all, a short line and a railroad run by more everyday people like you and me, so a weekend off does sound quite nice. From Ball Ground, Andrew and I would complete our day by heading to the main lines of the area over on the CSX side of things. But that's content for our next video. If you couldn't tell already, we're having quite the trip up here in Georgia, and my thanks to Andrew and his family for making it all happen. There's plenty more trains and places to cover, so stay tuned within the next few days for future uploads. But along the Georgia Northeastern Railroad here in Ball Ground, Georgia, I thank each and every one of you guys for watching, and I hope to see you all out there trackside soon. But until that day comes around, this is Christian from Multicolor Films. End of transmission.